Let's now welcome Mr. Guy Lamb to give us more insight into the Minister of Police's media briefing. Guy, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. So you heard the briefing there by the Police Minister saying that basically they need quite and obviously issues of crime in the country have significantly risen. Do you think that he will be able to then steer his department towards a more satisfactory standard where issues that have remained challenges like, as mentioned, illegal guns as well as criminals running amok in the country will be addressed during this administration?
Good afternoon and good afternoon to viewers. I think there's been some really important developments in the speech. I think the Minister made a number of very positive suggestions that also demonstrated that he'd been very well briefed, but also he has, despite not having a policing background or a crime prevention background, seems to have a very good understanding of the nature of the problems South Africans face. I think at the beginning of the briefing, he made some really important comments about the relationship between himself and the deputy ministers and making the point and emphasizing it throughout that they're a team, because previously in the past, the sort of deputy minister really hasn't had a role. You've had a really dominant police minister, and this time forward, it seems we've got a team approach, which I think is important, a good use of those resources. But I think also the important aspect that's been made is that he wants to give the National Police Commissioner space. And I think it's a really important aspect when under the previous certainly minister, is that we didn't necessarily have that space that was given to the National Police Commissioner. So that's important. I think also the minister emphasized that crime intelligence is going to be an apex priority. And this has been a problem in the past. Certainly the police were addressing this, but it does need to be prioritized because the police can't address organized crime in an effective way if they don't have the resources to do it. But of course, also emphasizing gun control and the needs to seize as many legal guns as possible was really important, but also emphasizing a kind of collaborative approach in engaging with stakeholders, which I thought was really positive.
But Guy, I mean, on that point of resources, when it comes to resources as well as staff number issues, right, what do you think the real challenges are here? Do you think it is maybe budgetary issues or even corruption as well as maladministration within the department itself? I mean, reports indicate that even SABC officials are the ones that actually make a huge part of those that are arrested in the commission of some of the crimes in the country.
I mean, the situation we have with the SABC is it's the largest government department in terms of government employees. I mean, we have, around 170,000 SABC members that are out there deployed throughout the country. It is a major consumer of resources. There are a large number of kind of procurement contracts that are up for grabs. And as a way, it's targeted by various sort of criminal organizations, various sort of criminal syndicates, and there has been a problem around corruption. And I think the minister did emphasize that in response to some of the questions that something needs to be done, something very serious needs to be done about this issue. So of course, dealing with corruption is quite essential, but we are dealing in a situation which, was certainly very evident before the election. It hasn't been emphasized after the election with the Government of National Unity, but the problem we're facing is a lack of budgetary resources. So the minister's saying that we need to find more money to police better, but it's going to be a real challenge going forward because there isn't sufficient money to do that, unfortunately.
And Guy, I mean, the crime stats are always shocking. I mean, incidents of murders as well as attempted murders have increased by about 13.7%. We know GBV and kidnappings have also increased by 47.7%. So what do you attribute as the biggest and driving factors to these shockingly increasing crime stats?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with the sort of socioeconomic circumstances many South Africans are finding themselves. We know sort of violent crime is driven by a variety of factors. Certainly the minister was pointing to firearms as a key issue, and it's a major driver of murder and attempted murder and armed robberies that happen within South Africa. It also plays a role in certain categories of men's violence against women. And so access to firearms is a key issue that needs to be dealt with. The minister also referenced alcohol. We know that alcohol is often a lot of violent crime and interpersonal violence happens in the context of alcohol consumption, particularly murders and attempted murders. But if we look in more recent years, a lot of it has to do with the sort of circumstances around what's happening at your sort of high crime areas, particularly when there's been a weakening of governance. And I think the minister at the beginning didn't go into a lot of detail about it, but did reference the integrated crime and violence prevention strategy and said that this is going to be implemented. So this is the strategy that government approved a couple of years ago, but hasn't done anything with. And this seeks to address many of the kind of underlying drivers of violent crime within South Africa. And he was talking about working with other government departments to implement this plan. So I think that is really important. But certainly what we've seen is, the high crime areas have witnessed quite a significant reduction in local governance quality. And we've seen an increase in organized criminal entities almost sort of seizing control of these particular areas. But you've also seen kind of sort of the context of inequality and poverty kind of driving violence as a way of resolving problems in many contexts.
And very quickly, Doctor, in closing, what do you think then is the best system or approach overall for the minister? Should there be a complete overhaul of the department in order to root out all the inherent challenges? Or what do you think would be then the best approach in this regard? Suggestions like, of course, not stationing police officers in the same area for too long because they get too close with these criminals and end up shielding them from accountability.
I think there are many different things that can be done. And I think the minister said some very important things towards the latter part of his briefing and responding to questions from the media. He was speaking about, trust is earned. And I think one of the problems we've had is that we have low levels of trust within the police. It sort of sank to below 30% in recent years, that, less than 30% of South Africans have indicated in surveys that they trust the police. And the minister indicated that police need to earn that trust back, and largely through being professional and being responsive and being courteous to members of the public. He also made a comment about, defining what a police station should do and how it should act and how members in those police stations should act, and develop norms and standards around that, and then hold the police to account for that. And I think that's really important if we wanted to start to make a difference, to improve trust in the police, to improve police legitimacy, to improve those relationships between communities and police members. And I think that's kind of a really good starting point. But ultimately, we do need to get a handle on police corruption. We do need to get a handle on police performance. And we need to be investing more in that. And the minister needs to be working quite closely with police management to try and achieve that.
Absolutely, Doctor. Thank you so much for that valuable input this afternoon. Dr. Guy Lamb there, who is a criminologist, also weighing in, of course, on the new Minister of Police's media briefing earlier on.